it is going to be even more difficult for college students to graduate because under the tertiary education subsidy, we used to give 60,000 pesos per academic year for private higher education institution students and 40,000 for those enrolling in the public higher education system. But beginning academic year 2024 to 2025, the UNIFAS board has limited it to 20,000 pesos per year for both public and private higher education institutions. This is because of the number of applicants they have, and the idea is to spread it out. But Mr. President, with the higher cost of living, our fear is that more of them will not be able to graduate. The next item I'd like to point out is the quality of education and job mismatch. 10 years ago, around 41% of college-age students were enrolled in higher education institutions. Now it is 47.49%, almost 50% of college-age students are enrolled in higher education. But the question we must ask ourselves, will this result in a well-educated, well-matched set of graduates? Based on news report, licensure exams for teachers, dentists, accountants, and more, even the bar exams actually continue to have low passing rates. Meanwhile, a study by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies conducted in 2022 showed that 40% of Filipinos are overqualified for their job. That said, our investment in higher education infrastructure, state-of-the-art facilities, cutting-edge technology, and ample resources create an environment that facilitates effective learning, teaching, and research. This also applies to our investments in our teachers, in our professors, for them to improve their own learnings and their teaching standards. On this note, we'd like to thank our chairperson, Senator Grace Poe, for accepting our amendments to fund futures thinking research programs of SUCs, increase capacity of medical SUCs, increase capacity of allied health and nursing programs of SUCs, dormitories, and upgrading and completion of facilities, learning spaces, and laboratories. This all represents our collective commitment to sustain and strengthen the accessibility, quality, and resilience of higher education across the nation. We remain focused on investing in projects and programs that ensure intergenerational equity while equipping our institutions to address future challenges. On that note, Mr. President, we are ready to accept questions from our colleagues. Thank you.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano. And my greetings to the Commissioner of CHED, headed by the Chairperson, Popoy de Vera, and the rest of the commissioners. Let me also greet the SUCs who are here with us, headed by the President of PASOK, Dr. Ronquillo. Good afternoon, sir. So I'll start off with questions in relation to the SUCs, Mr. President. And this was discussed during the hearing conducted by the good sponsor. And Section 4 of Republic Act number 10931, or the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education, provides a clear method for computing the funding requirement of FHE. And let me read Section 4. Free higher education in SUC and LUC, provided finally that the amount required to implement the free tuition and other school fees in SUCs and LUCs shall be determined by the respective governing boards of SUCs and LUCs based on the projected number of enrollees for each academic year, which shall be the primary factor in computing the annual proposed budget of SUCs and, in the case of LUCs, the CHED for this purpose. This shall in turn serve as the baseline during the preparation of the annual expenditure program by the Department of Budget and Management. Then, in Section 4 clearly states that the primary factor in computing the funding requirement for FHE is the projection of the number of enrollees. However, the DBM uses actual FHE billing 2 years ago in determining the funding level for the succeeding year under the National Expenditure Program. So if the funding year is fiscal year 2025, which is next year, they use the actual billing for 2023, 2 years behind. This method employed by the DBM is contrary to Section 4 RA 10931. This practice resulted in actual deficiencies of about 3 billion pesos in 2022 and 6.4 billion pesos in 2023. It is expected to result in future deficiencies. The projected deficiency for this year is about 2.3 billion pesos and 3 billion next year. These deficiencies show that national government has not been paying the true cost of FHE. So, Mr. President, Madam Sponsor, I would like to ask the good sponsor about her opinion on this divergence of interpretation between the DBM and also the free higher education law, because the free higher education law clearly states that what the DBM should use is the projection so that the budget will be accurate and use that projection as the baseline for budgeting, which is the NEP. However, the DBM created their own budgetary method, in which they use the actual enrollment 2 years behind. So obviously, it did not factor in projection. And that's where we are right now, no? And that's why we're experiencing this deficiency year in and year out, because what DBM is using are enrollment figures 2 years behind and not factoring the growth of the enrollment 2 years ahead. So I would like to ask the opinion of the good sponsor if this observation is indeed accurate, and is there a way to remedy the method of the DBM so that we will not incur deficiencies year in and year out?
Yes, Mr. President, the gentleman's observations are accurate. There is a big difference between what is provided by law and what is the current practice as determined by DBM. But moving forward, we are informed by the chairman of CHED that there is an ongoing TWG to address this. I would just like to add my own observations on the matter. Definitely, I share the observation made, and it is not consistent with the practice is not consistent with what is written in the law. But I do believe that that projection should also take into consideration the carrying capacity, because I think it is also our job, and when I say us policymakers and then those implementing the law, to ensure that the schools are in the best position to deliver quality education. Time and again in briefings, this committee has had, and then also discussions in EDCOM, our concern is the quality. And if we just look at the number of students who want to enroll, that's why I included it in my opening statement that we are now at 47% of the school of the higher education aged population. 47% of them are actually enrolling. Then we should really be increasing the funding for higher education. This includes facilities, this include the MOOE, including the investments in the teaching staff, including the non-teaching, because they're the ones who are keeping the environment, the entire environment proper, in the right, up to standard. digital, moving up digitally. So there's a lot that has to happen if we want to be able to absorb this increasing number of students who want to enroll, but we also want to ensure quality. Off the record, I discussed with our colleagues my serious concern about the amount of subsidies we're able to provide. So I can delve in that later if His Honor or other colleagues are interested in that discussion. But I am very worried about the quality of education if we cannot provide the kind of support that will be needed by the SUCs to absorb the increasing number of students who want to go to college.
Thank you for the answers, good sponsor, and thank you for enlightening us that the departments, particularly CHED and DBM, shares the same interpretation that moving forward, the intention or what is stated in the law, which is to use a projection, will be used, and the acknowledgement there comes in the form of that TWG that will be formed. No? And I would like to ask the good sponsor, what is the timetable of that TWG, and is the intention of the TWG to really enforce the true intention of the law, which is to use the projected number of enrollees? And I'll go to the carrying capacity after that, Madam Sponsor.
They intend to finalize that by January.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Sponsor. And we'll just await for updates from the CHED on that TWG. But it's a good step forward because I remember attending several budget hearings, several hearings that were conducted by the former chairperson of the Committee on Higher Education. It was chaired by our Senate President, Chis Escudero. I remember clearly that this deficiency would always come out. No? It will become, it's always a sticking point. And in fact, he offered himself to bridge between the DBM and the SUCs on how to find a solution moving forward. But I think personally, I think the TWG is a good step forward. And using the projected number, which is the realistic number to date and for next year, will be the proper formula. I'll go to the carrying capacity, and this has been discussed during the budget deliberations of the SUCs and CHED. And I mentioned during the budget hearing, the good thing is we have a lot of college-age students who are now interested going to school because of free higher education. And we also saw this very encouraging phenomenon in which the last decile, second to the last decile, and the third decile are growing, meaning the poorest of the poor are now the poorest of the poor are now enabled to go to college. They have the opportunity to get a college diploma, and that's a good phenomenon. On the downside is the carrying capacity, because a lot of students now are encouraged to go to school, to go to college. However, we all know that our SGs are now facing severe deficiencies in terms of facilities, not only classrooms, but laboratories, even gymnasium, even access to teachers and professors. And that was also discussed during the budget hearing. May I ask the good sponsor, what are the SUCs doing in order to address the carrying capacity issue? Meron bang anong capital outlay sa SUCs to have that? Ang insertion ba natin is for these two? 2 and 3?
No, sir, for next year lang. Ito lang, sir, yung 3 billion.
Okay.
Sasagot. Mr. President, so the question is, how are the SUCs coping with this increased carrying capacity? So one of the main solution is conducting general classes online, which I hastily reminded the President that I am not a fan of. And I actually am going to make a statement and will also ask the President to SUC President, to PASO President to respond. When they are offering the courses online, is this made very clear to the parents that they are now receiving an education that is partly delivered online instead of face-to-face? Alam ba yan? Kasi Chairman Popo, you will recall a few years ago, this representation was very firm about, and the chair supported it, that there's nothing wrong with conducting classes online, but it must be made clear that this, if X amount of classes are conducted online, you have to make that statement very clear, because it is a great vehicle to obtaining a degree for those who cannot attend face-to-face. But if you can attend face-to-face, I feel it's a disservice to not be able to get that. So I just wanted to be clear if that is made very, if I want to be certain that that is clear to the parents and that they are following the guidelines of CHED on providing online. On that note, so you can give me a clear answer, because I don't want just a nod. I really want to hear what is the policy here. I want to share this information with our colleagues that for some, despite the demand, they did not increase their enrollment. So I actually have to say I'm proud of that, because we really need to be firm about maintaining the quality of education, the well-being also of the teachers, of the professors, na kayanan nilang turuan yung mga estudyante na. So I have here a list of the increase of enrollment per SUC. Some are as low as 1%, so negligible. Some are 3%, 12%, 7%, but there are some that are as high as, and I will ask them to answer us how they, because that is a question of His Honor, 52% increase in enrollment. And then meron din 44% increase. And the top notcher is, are you ready for this? 129% increase.
Wow.
So nagdoble. So,
Which
President
school is
Tirso,
that?
may
Which sponsor?
I would like to excuse President Tirso so he can consult with the three that I mentioned and ask how are they coping, because I think we should know.
I think on the good side, Madam Sponsor, it's good because students are interested in studying. But I join the good sponsor in preserving and maintaining quality, because we don't want just to promote diploma mills in
Clean.
that regard, Mr. President. Well, Mr.
And just to add, CHED has a TWG also to study the carrying capacity. I'd also like to get more information that maybe we can just ask the chairman to submit to us, because it'd be interesting to know, like if you say, 10% increase is not a burden, then okay, then we can say that, okay, 10% increase is not. But 10% increase for the next 3 years straight is
Yes,
30+%. So parang kailangan clear talaga yung standards natin for that. President Tirso, I'll wait for that answer. Serious ako dyan. Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, system-wide, our average increase is about 8%, system-wide, but of course, it varies from location to location. But typically, I'm sure the good sponsor knows this and will agree.
Pero ang hirap naman kasi sabihin nun na may 1% tapos may 126%. Ang hirap naman i-average nun, di ba?
Yeah, Mr. President. Well, Mr. President, going to the online, typically online, the way I understand it, you offer online to students who are currently employed or who cannot do full-time studies, Mr. President. It's a course designed for students who are working, Mr. President, but not the online should not be designed because we don't have classrooms, Mr. President. No? So it skews the objective, Mr. President.
And I hope all our SUCs are taking note of that, Chairman Popoy, na yun nga may purpose yun eh.
Yes,
Nagtatrabaho ka. I don't know if there's anything else. Or meron like I know there are incidents where a student is disabled, napakahirap naman mag full-time. Okay,
Correct, Mr.
maraming incidents na bagay naman yung online. Anyway, Chairman Popoy just gave me this, that CHED only allows 25% online per course per semester. So that means if you have 4 subjects. So my question is, and I'll just share it with the body, so isang tanong, isang sagot. Does that mean that one subject in a semester, if you have 4 subjects, one subject can be taught purely online, or does it mean per subject? Okay, per subject. So per subject, 25% can be online. In other words, if you had if it's a MWF class, like 3 units, so that's 12 sessions in a month, then 3 of those classes can be online. Personally, and I always have a disclaimer, I'm not the expert, but personally, as a previous student, as a mother of students, medyo okay naman sa akin yun. I think that's fair, no? Because then 75% of the class is with the face-to-face. Kasi during the pandemic, what bothered me was that there were some subjects, because of the teacher per se, totally online yung subject na yon. So sabi ko, ang hirap naman nun na, you get the face-to-face value for some, and then the others, 100 or 80% of that subject is online. So I'm glad that and we're strict about this. Okay.
Yeah. Mr. President, it's good that the Commission acknowledged the carrying capacity bottleneck that we are experiencing right now. And again, that's manifested through the TWG that they created. And we'll request from the Commission the results of that carrying capacity study. And moving forward, we saw in the budget that the Senate added 3 billion on top of the 9 billion capital outlay for the SUCs, Mr. President. And I thank the good sponsor for adding 3 billion. So what I'm driving at, Mr. President, is there is capital outlay of about 12 billion, but through that carrying capacity study, we might rationalize the capital outlay to areas or to SUCs that really need it the most. For example, if you are growing at 129%, obviously, you need more school buildings, you need more gyms, you need more laboratories, as opposed to areas where it only has 1% growth. So that carrying capacity study is very important to rationalize also how we distribute capital outlay in order to address carrying capacity. And on top of that, Madam Sponsor, at the proper time, we will also submit our amendment to include in the budgets of the different SUCs in total about 3 billion pesos to address the deficiency, Mr. President. So we will recommend the committee. We have a list of SUCs who are in need of additional income so they can accommodate the students going into their universities. And we'll submit to the committee that breakdown, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'll go to another topic, and this was also raised during the committee hearings, and I thank the good sponsor for, this is just to flag the committee, the good sponsor not to include the special provisions on SUC infrastructure project, Mr. President. In the 2024 GAA, there's a special provision there, and I'll read it. SUC infrastructure projects, the Department of Public Works and Highways shall implement the infrastructure projects of SUCs exceeding 5 million pesos, Mr. President. And I thank the good sponsor for not including that. But looking at history in 2024, in fact, the NEP did not contain that. The GAB did not contain that. The committee report did not contain that. But it magically appeared in the bicameral conference committee report, Mr. President. So I would like to just reiterate and flag the committee to and all of us here in this hall to look out for that special provision because it created a lot of complications to the SUCs, Mr. President. Only 13 out of the 191 SUC infrastructure projects were subjected to this special provision, Mr. President. So in other words, a lot of delays were incurred in terms of building infrastructure projects at the SUC levels. And we're talking about carrying capacity, meaning we need to build in the SUCs. But with this special provision, we are actually slowing down or delaying the infrastructure buildup of SUCs, Mr. President. And of course, that will cause domino effect. For example, it affects the carrying capacity. It also affects spending and budget utilization, Mr. President. So just I'm just flagging the committee that this might reappear in the bicameral conference committee report, and we should all be alert regarding this special provision, Mr. President. So, Mr. President,
Before you move on to a topic, I'm just clarifying something. A minute suspension, please.
Session is suspended.
Ready to resume.
Session is resumed.
Note the gentleman's observations, and we also had the same observations. Thank you.
thank
We
you.
also, we shared, I just wanted you to hear that we also shared the same observation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'll jump to another topic, and this is in regards to the TES. During last year's budget deliberation, this representation highlighted the declining portion of tertiary education subsidy grantees coming from listahanan and four-piece households. In our discussion, the TES program, when the TES program was launched in 2018, 71% of its beneficiaries were from low-income households. By the end of 2022-2023, this distribution had shifted significantly, with 79% of grantees coming from places with no SUCs or LUCs, or PNSL for short, and only 21% from low-income household, Mr. President. So we, to address this, we added a special provision, Mr. President. And this special provision, and we'll put this on the slide. This is one. And I'll read the special provision that was inserted for the 2024 GAA. In the selection of new UWACTE TES grantees, the UNIFAS shall, pursuant to Section 7 of RA 10931, prioritize students under Listahanan 3, including students from four-piece households and other students from low-income households, but not part of Listahanan 3, provided that such students submit proof of income to the UNIFAS. And because of this special provision, Mr. President, I'll show a slide. There was a dramatic increase in the 4Ps. There, the red bar. There was a dramatic increase in the share of 4Ps applying to TES, Mr. President. And I thank the good sponsor for accepting that amendment that we proposed. And we also talked about this during the budget deliberation, Mr. President. So in other words, Mr. President, the share of poor students accommodated by the TES
So overall, it rose from 23 to 35
it rose from 23%
to 35.
to 35% in academic 2023-2024, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, we submitted this proposal to reinsert this in the 2025 budget. Unfortunately, Mr. President, this was not accommodated for 2025, Mr. President. So I would like to appeal to the good sponsor if we can reinsert this in the 2025 budget, because the effect to low-income household is obviously quite significant. And I think this is also signaling that, again, we're staying true to the intention of the law to prioritize low-income household, particularly the 4Ps, Mr. President. So I would, at the proper time, we'll submit again some recommendations.
Mr. President, short answer. We submitted that for inclusion in the 2025 Senate version committee report. Kaya lang tapos na kasi yung deliberations nila, but they assure us that it will be carried. So to be
Thank you,
clear,
Mr.
we
President.
supported this provision. And then Chairman Popoy also reminded me, because I also have it here in my notes, that this policy is already part of
Institutionalized.
UNIFAS, no? Sa UNIFAS. Yeah, it's already part. So
okay.
so doble-doble na yung protection natin na matutuloy natin yan.
Mr. President, if it's part of the UNIFAS, is there a need for this special provision?
Technically, no, because nandyan na, they're already
Are
doing
we-
it. But we already submitted it, so wag na natin bawiin.
Sige, Mr. President. Mr. President, so double assurance, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, for that double assurance. Mr. President, I'll jump to another topic, and this is on tulong-dulong, Mr. President. And we noticed, Mr. President, that the tulong-dulong program grew in the, well, let me backtrack, Mr. President. In the 2025 NEP, there was zero allocation to tulong-dulong program, Mr. President. And in 2020, in the 2025 GAB that was submitted to us, it grew to about 15 billion pesos, Mr. President. 2024.
Yes, sir. 3.7.
So,
Is there a question?
looking at the...
An observation?
Malapit na,
Something
Mr.
we
President.
don't know?
Malapit na, Mr. President. Mr. President, in
Just a
2023...
clarification, what percentage is the increase? Again, for the
Well, in
record.
2020
From zero to...
to 15 billion, Mr. President.
From 3 billion to 15 billion.
Yes. But just to set the context, Mr. President, in 2023 GAA, tulong-dulong is about 1 billion pesos. In 2024, it's about 3.7 billion pesos, Mr. President. So the tulong-dulong program for this GAB, for this year's GAB, grew by about fivefold, Mr. President. So baka lahat ng estudyante ho sa buong Pilipinas maging scholar na natin, Mr. President, no, with that amount, Mr. President. Is there any particular reason, Mr. President, for the dramatic increase? This is on top of the tertiary education subsidy of 20 billion.
Does His Honor assume I know how the House thinks?
And just to put that on record, and I'll go to a
No, I think it's important that we put that on record. No,
Yeah.
His Honor pointed out that there was no amount for this item in the NEP, correct?
Correct, Mr. President.
Because this is a congressional insertion.
Yes.
And it is a House insertion, to be clear.
Correct,
The
Mr.
Senate
President.
did not have a counterpart, no? So
No.
this is a House, ano. And the objective here is to provide educational assistance to the constituents.
Yes.
I mean, we all believe in providing educational assistance. But His Honor has pointed out that it was in 2023, it was 1 billion, and then 2024, 7 billion, and now it's 15 billion pesos. What I, as chairperson, would like to point out is that if you look at the other subsidies that we have, there are criteria for the release of these fundings. So me, as a proponent of targeted funding, so His Honor is a proponent for targeted beneficiaries,
Yes,
no? Very particular yung nasa listahan, nangangailangan. Ako naman po, my view naman is in the interest of nation building, we should use our collective experience, and these are policymakers, industry. The term should be, we should use these as determinants for what courses are in demand. So time and again, Senator Joel Villanueva and I, just because in particular we are very much aware of the shortages in the health field of various specializations. So that's why we have our Doktor para sa Bayan, and that's growing very steadily. But we also continue to have a big gap in the specializations of in areas of occupational therapy, speech therapists, as His Honor knows, guidance counselors, psychologists, radiotherapists, and so on and so forth. So these are gaps that affect the delivery of healthcare in this country. And I'm sure there are other gaps in other industries as well. So this representation is a proponent of targeted benefits, 10% of the budget available.
Yeah.
So just to put that on record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm sure that the Tulong-Dulong program is well-intentioned in a sense that it also gives education subsidy
Of course.
to students who wants to go to school, Mr. President.
Yes.
This almost fivefold increase, the intention of giving subsidies to college students is a noble intention, Mr. President. The complication there, Mr. President, is the special provision that comes with it. And let me just read the special provision. Ito ba yun?
Yes, hanggang dito lang sa program.
In the selection of the new UACTE TES grantees,
No, sige. This one.
sorry. The implementation of UACTE TES shall likewise cover the existing grantees under the Tulong-Dulong program, subject to the prioritization as reiterated in the preceding. Kasama ba ito?
That's our
Sorry.
That's
Oo. So period lang pala, Mr. President. Let me just repeat. The implementation of UACTE TES shall likewise cover the existing grantees under the Tulong-Dulong program, Mr. President. So in other words, for next year, no, that 15 billion will be absorbed by the TES. And the fear there, Mr. President, it will displace the prioritization identified for the TES grantees, Mr. President. Yung 1 billion, 3 billion, I think that's manageable because the test is quite big at about 20 billion. But if you are now going to absorb 15 billion out of the 20 billion TES, then you are in effect displacing, Mr. President, the prioritization that we talked about under the TES program. So that's a complication that I see, Mr. President. I think the 3 billion, manageable yan eh. But a size almost 70% of the entire TES budget will create complications moving forward, Mr. President. So that's just to put that on record, and that's the analysis that we came out after looking all of this data, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I will join His Honor in his observation. Currently, what we do is whoever are the tulong-dunong beneficiaries, automatic yan, the next year they are absorbed sa TES. Okay. So sabi nga ng ating kasamahan, yung 1 billion worth of subsidy, so the next year kaya pa naman i-absorb. Yung 3 siguro kaya. Yun. Kasi I want people to understand that kaya natin ina-absorb yun because gusto natin na beyond first year,
Correct, Mr.
tuloy-tuloy
President.
sila sa second year, third year, fourth year. That's why we're now putting them in the system so that they will get their support, their financial support, the second year, the third year, and the fourth year. And normally in our process, if the DBM can absorb it well and good. Pero if not, kaya naman natin maghanap ng extra 1 billion. Pero
Correct,
yung
Mr.
15
President.
billion
Correct, Mr.
next
President.
year, hindi ko na alam kung saan natin kukunin yon. Hindi ko na talaga alam. So that's a problem that we are
Yes, Mr. President.
are worried about. Yeah.
Correct,
And
Mr.
not to mention, I didn't have time to do the numbers, but I did put on record also that given the other funding, that the tests, I mentioned that in my opening statement that the amount of tests has already been reduced, no, from 60,000 a year for private school recipients, it's now 20, and for private school public school recipients, previously 40, it's also now 20. With the idea being mas dadami ang tatanggap. So parami. And ang tanong is, ganun ba kababa yung presyo ng education? Makakatapos ba sila?
Yes, Mr. President.
Baka yung pamasahin nila dun sa 20,000 na yun hanggang half semester lang. Then the rest of the half semester, they're struggling. And this is also findings of EDCOM. Nakita ko kasi si Edie Mark, kaya naalala ko yun. Ang lakas makanad kaya nakita ko kaagad. But no, that's their findings. And we need to make use of the information we have to come up with policies that work.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that. Another complication, Mr. President. The maximum income for TES is 100. This is family income. Is 166,000, Mr. President. The maximum income for tulong-dunong is 400,000 pesos. So it's more, in a sense, it's bigger, no, more liberal, Mr. President. But if you have a family of earning 200,000 pesos, you'll fall under tunong-dunong. Now, if you will be absorbed next year under TS, that family earning 200,000 will now be absorbed by the TS, displacing the 166,000 family earning that amount, Mr.
That is,
President. So that is another complication in terms of displacement or disenfranchising those
The poorest of the poor.
the poorest of the poor and those under the TES.
Yeah. And again, bumaba na nga yung tinatanggap nila because
Correct.
of this new policy
Tama,
of
that's correct.
Unifast. Tapos mas marami pang ka-share. So I truly believe, Mr. President, that these are tough decisions that we have to make. Di naman natin minamaramot yung makakapag-aaral, pero ang hirap i-justify na pinag-aral mo lang standard na education, and sadly, even worse, na hindi rin sila makakatapos, na wala man lang, like, what are they when they finish first year? Ano yun? Ano sasabihin mo doon?
Correct, Mr. President.
May
yun.
sinusulat sila dyan undergrad, 1 year. Ganon. Ganon ang sinusulat nila.
So, Mr. President, those are just to put that on record, and at the proper time, we'll also suggest some ways forward, and I thank the good sponsor for acknowledging that these are tough decisions that we need to make here in the Senate and also in policy making, Mr. President. So we'll have some formulas in mind and we'll submit to the committee for her consideration, Mr. President. And Mr. President, This is another question, but I've discussed this with Chair Popoy earlier. He was gracious enough to come to the office and suggest some ways forward. I'll just put this into the record, Mr. President. The budget of the Teacher Education Council has been appropriated already by the good sponsor who also chairs the DepEd Budget Committee, Mr. President. And with that operationalization of the Teacher Education Council, part of the responsibility is to give out scholarships to the best of the best future teachers, Mr. President. So they're targeting 1,800, the best of the best incoming teachers, and the amount that they need to give out scholarships to those potential teachers, about 200 million pesos, Mr. President. Initially, we wanted to carve it out from the TES budget, but the chairman of the Commission on Higher Education, Chair Popoy, suggested that the two programs are not the same in terms of objective. The TES is geared towards the poorest students. The Teacher Education Scholarship Program is for the best of the best incoming teachers. So we would suggest to the committee, we would again propose to the committee to create a separate line item for the Teacher Education Program to a tune of 200 million pesos. And we'll just submit to the committee a source for that. Maybe a source, Mr. President, we're thinking is baka kukurot lang ho tayo dun sa tulong-dunong program, Mr. President, of 15 billion. So that we will have the best and the brightest teachers coming into the public school system, Mr. President.
Noted, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And lastly, Mr. President, the good sponsor raised this earlier, and I am also quite interested to learn what is the reason. I heard in her opening speech, Mr. President, that the amounts for the TS were reduced from 60,000 for private schools to 20,000 to and then from 40,000 to public schools to 20,000, Mr. President. And Mr. President, 20,000 per school year is only 2,000 pesos per month, Mr. President. So I think that will be very difficult for a student going into private schools, Mr. President. And if you break down
Tuition fees per program dapat.
Yan yung magiging, yan lang kaya nilang i-afford kung gamit nila yung 10,000 for tuition.
just on the looking at the different programs right now, Mr. President. For example, in elementary education, it's 9,000 pesos already. For criminologies, 8,000 pesos already. For tech voc teacher education, 6,000 pesos already. So reducing the amount to 20,000 will just cover the tuition fee. At least half of that will cover the tuition fee. Paano pa yung pang-project, yung pang-extra expenses? And I know Her Honor is very passionate about dormitories, which is a very practical approach to students living in far-flung areas. Paying for dormitory 10,000 pesos for dormitory will not be enough, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, I'd like to get the reason why the Commission reduced the amount of TES subsidy, and what is their logic and what is their computation in reducing the amounts for this subsidy, Mr. President.
So given by 14 billion na increase, will it cover any increase in that?
Actually, Mr. President, the slots that they have every year is 200,000. The applicants they've had in 2021 and 2023 is at 1.6 million. So that is why the board decided to slash the amount to accommodate more. And so how many do you accommodate now? So as it is, at the reduced amount, they're only able to accommodate 250,000, nothing close
To
to
the
this
1.6
applicants. But a further update is, Mr. President, in their latest board meeting, they increased the test of the private schools to 27,000. So as I said, it was at 20, it's now at 27, but previously, in fact, this year, for 2024, it is still at 60,000. So it is still reduced to, it's still less than half the amount. It's 27,000 compared to 60,000.
Yes. Well, Mr. President, let's do a test case on the private schools. What is the breakdown for that 60,000? I am sure they studied this and felt that the 60,000 might be more than enough, Mr. President. So what is the logic in reducing it to 27,000?
Needs. Okay. Okay. When you say educational needs, that's everything from transport, food, books, and equipment. Okay.
Di ba may 14 billion sa government?
So, the original computation for the use of the 60,000 was as follows. 20,000 would be for tuition, and then the remaining 40,000 would be for all the educational needs from transportation, food, lodging, equipment in school, and so on and so forth. So that's 60,000. And that's why for the public school, it's 40,000 because the 20,000 is already covered. So now, with only little over 20, then you assume that all of this, transportation, food, books, other materials for projects, and if maybe the first year they buy a laptop, that's 7,000 only.
Yes, correct, Mr. President. Well, Mr. President, I share the sentiment of the good sponsor. I know that she's very passionate in making sure that the students finish from day one all the way to the fourth year, Mr. President. And we don't want a scenario wherein we give the subsidy, but they will not finish. No? It's either they will drop out in the middle of the academic year, or they will not pursue studying anymore, Mr. President, because as you go to the higher levels, it becomes very costly, Mr. President. So my sentiment towards that, Mr. President, is the amounts should be enough in order for the students to graduate up to fourth year, up to the end of the course, Mr. President. I feel that the 60,000 and 40,000 are amounts that will incentivize and as well as cover the expenses for the student in order for his or her to finish the school year, Mr. President. So my take on that is the amounts are designed, the original amounts are designed for the students not to drop out and finish and graduate, because that's what we want, Mr. President, for them to graduate rather than giving them subsidies and halfway they will just drop out, Mr. President. So I will just request from the Commission, Mr. President, a study on the amounts, the reduced amounts, Mr. President. What is the science and also the rationale on reducing those amounts? And I'll just request the Commission for that study, Mr. President, because marami nga tayong napapag-aral, hindi pa nila natatapos, Mr. President. As opposed to konti lang, pero tapos naman lahat, Mr. President. So that is the logic that I'm thinking, Mr. President.
What I'd like to share to His Honor's observations and statements is that with that now no longer in effect rates, the 60 and the 40,000, the completion rate is 79.2, so almost 80%, so not too bad. And now that you reduced it, bababa ito. So I guess
there's a threat that it will go down, Mr. President.
I honestly feel it's a huge threat because, like I said, the findings of EDCOM is that financial
Yes, Mr.
challenges are the biggest deterrent to finishing. So is that a policy that you can still review? Because when you accept this additional 50,000 students, next year we will now have subsidize 100,000 kasi 50 plus another 50 sophomores na sila. The following year, it's going to be 150 and it's going to be 200. So when you look at me like that, who's going to produce that money?
Well, Mr. President, I'd like to urge the Commission to re-study the amount
Yeah.
and also to rethink the amounts. And the threat there is bababa yung ating graduation rates.
Yun na nga eh. And I wish, and this is another lengthy discussion ongoing, is that do we even have, in other countries or even in the Philippines before, you have an associate degree, di ba? Maraming ganon. So, you can actually choose to, you can opt out after the second year, work, and go back. There's also that sponsored. Pero it's not even available. It's not widely available in many souks. So paano? Ano yung opt-out nila? I think you should only, this is my humble opinion, you should only change that number if you have a opt-out associate's degree or something for 2 years, because
Yeah.
I don't want this 79.2% to go down lower. And it's already at 79. And wala pa dito yung inflationary cost.
Correct, Mr.
So
President.
technically, baka every 3 to 5 years, nag-i-increase. Yeah, so that's really a problem we have.
But Mr. President, the reduction might be well-meaning, meaning they want to increase more grantees, but it might create unintended consequences in terms of reduction in graduation rates, Mr. President. So I'd like to urge the Commission to reevaluate that policy because instead of having more graduates, we might have lesser graduates, but we're giving subsidies from day one. No? So matatapon lang yung subsidies na because on day one we give it to them, but they will not finish the course. No? So as opposed to giving it on day one and finishing the course, Mr. President. So I would like to, again, restate my sentiment that the Commission should rethink this policy and just submit to the committee the study on how they came up with the 27,000, Mr. President.
May sagot na sila dun eh. It's by the sheer, they just adjusted it, di ba? That's what you said. They just adjusted it because of the sheer number of.
Yes, Mr. President.
So that's a problem because there are consequences that you did not factor in.
Yeah.
And there are nodding yes.
But Mr. President, sana naman mayroong deeper analysis on correlating it to dropout rates, correlating it to graduation rates, because we saw that in the TESDA budget, Mr. President, that when we're giving a lot of scholarship for short-term courses, but we also see a lot of dropouts, no? High attrition rates, Mr. President. So that might become the phenomenon with this lower down subsidy rates, Mr. President. So may unintended
And I'll add to
consequence
that,
talaga.
Mr. President, the PIDS already said that 40% of our graduates are overqualified. So actually, I'm posting this question to the own agencies that I'm defending. What was the logic? Overqualified na nga ang 40%, dadagdagan pa natin. Ba't hindi lang tayo mag-improve with 10 billion pesos, 20 billion, mag-improve na lang tayo ng quality of education? Or market a few shorter courses that are really in need and high-paying. Marami
Correct,
naman.
Mr. President.
O, pwede ba natin baguhin yan in time for the final committee, the final report? Seriously, we're creating a new problem. Please, thank you.
I think this should be a
They'll do
deeper
that
study,
now.
Mr. President. Not only the math, but also the effect. That we might, I can see unintended consequences here, Mr. President. So we should study this very carefully, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, that's it for this representation. I've already exhausted all of my questions, and I thank the good sponsor for graciously clarifying and answering this representation's questions. Maraming salamat po. Again, greetings to the Commission and also to the members of the SUCs who are here with us. Gandang hapon po. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gatchalian. Likewise, the Commission and likewise the SUC family are in good hands. We have so many advocates here, like Senator Gatchalian, the sponsors, Pia Cayetano. Even the minority leader, the deputy minority leader are very supportive of the state universities and college. Even this representation, I remember, before I recognize Senator Ontiveros for interpellation, that in my one and only term in the House of Representatives, that I spearheaded the budget of the SUCs at that time, because of the influx, especially of the students right now, because the free tertiary education, they would really need that support to accommodate everyone. Likewise, the minority leader, ito is intervention, Senator Gok Mintel, yun po sa PUP, which is very deserving as well. To his intervention, meron tayong building to address the overpopulation. Kaya lang, first phase pa lang. So, I will also make the proper amendment so that it can be completed. Sabi nga ba, just like all the other state university colleges, UP, PUP, poor but deserving students, they really deserve to be supported. So with that, I will make the proper amendment to complete what the minority leader has started in PUP. So the chair would like to recognize as the deputy minority leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, for interpellation.
Salamat, Mr. President, at magandang hapon po, magandang gabi na pala, good sponsor. At sa Commissioner ng CHED at lahat po ng mga opisyal ng ating mga state colleges and universities. So, Mr. President, good sponsor, una po tungkol sa safe spaces. As a principal author of the Safe Spaces Act, I'd like to get updates from the Commission on Higher Education about its compliance with the obligations stipulated in the law. Pwede po bang i-inform ng good sponsor itong representasyon sa bilang ng mga higher education institutions na in-inspect ng Commission? Ano po yung percentage ng mga institusyong ito na nag-comply sa kanilang mga obligasyon sa ilalim ng Safe Spaces Act, good sponsor?
Would Her Honor prefer that I suspend for a minute, or would she like to ask a question while they are putting together their response?
Sure, I can go on to my second question, sponsor. Salamat. So, my next question, couple of questions, is on CHED's regulatory power vis-a-vis tuition fee increases. Pursuant to RA 6278, 70% of the tuition fee increases is supposed to go towards increases in salaries, wages, allowances, and other benefits for teaching and non-teaching personnel. I understand that the Commission has issued 2 memoranda orders on this, specifically CMO number 3 and number 8, series of 2012. In effect pa po ba ang mga CMOs na ito, good sponsor?
Yes, Mr. President.
Alright, salamat, good sponsor. Kung ganon, based on CMO number 3, CHED regional offices have the responsibility to monitor the implementation of the allocation of incremental proceeds. We have received complaints from the Council of Teachers and Staff of colleges and universities that their members have not been receiving the 70% share of tuition fee increases in their universities. Pwede po bang linawin ng good sponsor bakit hindi nakayanan ng CHED i-enforce ang CMO nila? At pwede po bang magbigay good sponsor ng mga datos sa ilang mga universidad na monitor at comply sa CMO, good sponsor?
Yeah. So, Mr. President, Chairman De Vera says that they act immediately on the complaints that they receive. If Her Honor would like to forward those complaints, they will immediately act on it, because at this very moment, he's not aware that there have been any that have been brought to their attention.
All right, salamat. We'll do good sponsor.
And the
at,
SOP,
salamat.
by the way, also is
Chair.
that when they receive a request for a increase, they also need to hear from the association or union of and also both the employees to find out if they are compliant with this requirement that Her Honor mentioned.
Salamat, good sponsor. That's good to hear. And I actually have a question a little later, kaugnay din po dyan sa request for increases. Pero so, and I will furnish the chair and the commission the details about these particular complaints through the good sponsor. Sa kabila nun, can the good sponsor provide data on universities have been monitored and have complied with the CMO, good sponsor?
We will submit, Mr. President, no, because like I said, at the moment, the chairman is not aware that there's any complaints, or if there's no complaints, and the assumption is they're compliant. But because it's the regional offices that handle it, so it is possible na meron, pero what he's saying to me is that they will have to go back to the regional offices and check with each one who has, to find out if they have received any complaints and to find out who is compliant.
Okay. Salamat, good sponsor. So, na-anticipate nyo yung follow-up question ko na, in fact, this second question about this topic was not anymore about those who have not complied, pero kung ilan ang nagko-comply, na-monitor at na-monitor na nagko-comply. So, kahit yung datang iyon, wala po ang commission sa ngayon? Ipadadala pa?
Wala po. They will have to get it from the regional offices.
From the regional offices. All right. Salamat, good sponsor. I would have wished dala na po nila sa ngayon, but then if they don't have it right now, iintayin ko na lamang po. But further to the complaints that we have received at ifo-forward ko po sa commission sa pamamagitan ng good sponsor, the complainants highlighted their great difficulties in accessing the latest audited financial statements of their respective HEIs. They claim that the reporting requirements, such as the Certificate of Intended Compliance and Certificate of Compliance required by CMO number 3, are insufficient to verify that proceeds are allocated to personnel salaries. Nakikiisa ba yung commission sa paniniwala na ang mga reforma sa RA 6278 o kahit sa mga existing memoranda orders ay kailangan para siguruhin yung compliance ng mga universidad? Good sponsor.
So, Mr. President, what they have are the prerequisites for the application. They do not have the post financial statements after. So, but I've already asked them. I think it should be included so that they can automatically see the compliance with the regulations. And they said they will do that, Mr. President.
Salamat, good sponsor, pati sa pakikiisa ng good sponsor dun sa concern ng representasyong ito. And does the Commission also share the belief that the good sponsor shares? At will this possibly lead to reforms to the law itself and also reforms to existing memoranda orders, good sponsor?
Yes, but basically that's what they already confirmed with me when I explained it to Her Honor a minute ago. So we have their assurance.
All right, salamat, good sponsor. So ngayon, tanong dun sa isang napag-usapan natin ng good sponsor just a few minutes ago tungkol sa requests for tuition fee increases. Part of the Commission's UACTE budget is to cover free higher education for local universities and colleges. Obligado po ba yung commission na pondohan yung full costs ng free higher education for LUCs? At kung ang isang LUC itaas yung tuition fees nila, kailangan ba ng approval ng CHED o obligado ba ang CHED na bayaran yung tuition fee increase, good sponsor?
So, CHED does give, CHED ba o Unifast? Unifast does give the full tuition for the looks, but by law, they cannot increase for 5 years. So wala namang idadagdag kasi they are prohibited from increasing.
Okay. Pero kung yung isang LUC na participant na sa Unifast, sinusuportahan na ng Unifast, kung lumipas ng 5 taon, magtataas sila ng tuition fee, kailangan ba aprubahan muna ng CHED or ng Unifast for that matter? At obligado ba siya bayaran yung tuition fee increase, good sponsor?
Yes, they have to get the, they have to submit and they have to submit their request also, Mr. President, similar to what the SUCs do.
Okay. So they have to submit, ibig sabihin kailangan aprubahan muna ng Unifast at pagkatapos nun,
Yes.
saka obligado ang pagbayad sa increase. All right. Salamat, good sponsor. Dako naman po ako, Mr. President, sa task force report. My office, in collaboration with others, worked with the Commission on Higher Education on the task force report to address issues related to the recommendations to total challenges admission phases to ensure eligible students receive their complete grants in a timely manner. Despite my numerous requests for updates from the Commission about the task force report, my office received the updates from the Commission only last night. Nevertheless, I am pleased that the Commission has agreed to implement most of the task force recommendations. Alin pong mga rekomendasyon ay nasa proseso pa na i-fully implement ng Commission, good sponsor, at kanilang expected timeline?
So, like the automatic fund release mechanism and policy implementation by Unifast, the Unifast is in the process of finalizing a new MOA with the Land Bank of the Philippines so that Land Bank Visa debit cards may be used in disbursing funds directly to the students. And then on the enhanced automation of the Unifast system, the Unifast Secretariat has developed a system to enhance the process in FHE billing. The system automates the computation of fees based on the certified TOSF from the HEIs. This will ensure the accuracy and timeliness of the submission of billing documents. The system underwent alpha and beta testing in 2023 and is now being used for the school year, academic year 2024 and 2025, billing by 5 selected LUCs with a uniform TOSF structure. There's a report on all this. It's quite lengthy, so we can just furnish Her Honor with a copy.
Thank you so much, good sponsor. And so these are at least 2 of the recommendations that are in the process of being fully implemented. For these 2, or on average for all the recommendations na nasa proseso ngang ito, ano yung expected timeline ng Commission for full implementation? Like, kailan po ma-finalize yung MOA at magsisimula na po yung automatic fund release sa tulong ng Land Bank? Kailan po fully implemented yung enhanced automation? Or fully implemented na po ba yun?
For full automation, that will take about 1 year, Mr. President.
Alright. And yung automatic fund release, 1 year din po ba, good sponsor?
That one is just 6 months.
6 months. So is it possible, good sponsor, na lahat ng mga rekomendasyon na are in the process of being fully implemented, ang timeline para doon ay from 6 months to 1 year on average? Or meron po bang ilan na tatagal pa ng kaunti?
No, it won't go beyond 1 year, Mr. President.
Salamat. That's good to know po. So more or less 1 school year din para sa mga estudyante. Salamat, good sponsor. Now, over the years, hundreds of students have reached out to my office expressing their uncertainties about when their much-needed scholarship funds would arrive. Students who want to voice their grievances are held back by fear of suffering repercussions, to which the UNIFAS Secretariat mentioned that they have grievance mechanisms in place. Pwede po bang magbigay linaw ang good sponsor sa ano ang mga grievance mechanisms in place para sa estudyante? Paano sinisiguro ng komisyon na mga estudyante mabibigyan ng isang safe environment para isaboses yung mga concerns nila nang walang takot ng repercussion mula man sa respective CHEDRO nila o higher education institution, good sponsor?
So, Mr. President, as soon as they receive a complaint, they will send a show cause order. I was just shown a copy of a complaint that came from Her Honor's office, and they issued the show cause order. But I also asked that specifically if it's just a student without the need of a senator to endorse the complaint, ganun din ba? And we are assured that the process is the same.
I see. So makatanggap lang ang commission ng reklamo diretso mula sa estudyante, padadala nila ng show cause order, either yung CHEDRO or yung HEI concerned. Are there any other ways in which the commission
Ang sama
ensures
naman
a
ng
safe
English ng sagot
environment
ng
for
school
this?
na to.
Ano po yun, good sponsor?
Ang sama ng English ng sagot ng school. He was having a misleading information.
At least wala pang estudyanteng nagreklamo ng ganon sa opisina ko, good sponsor.
Ongoing yung kanyang... Ano yun? Ano ba yun?
Mas grabe yung mga reklamo nila.
Grabe yung reklamo ko dun sa English nila.
Sponsor. Are there any other ways in English or whatever other language that the Commission provides a safe environment for students to bring their concerns or complaints forward?
May hotline din sila, but I will ask a follow-up question for Her Honor's better for Her Honor and my better understanding. Katulad niyan, yung sulat na pinakita niyo sa akin, may name ng student. Pag nagsabi yung student na itago yung pangalan niya, kung hindi naman specific, tinatago niyo naman. O yun naman, tinatago naman nila yung
Parang
pangalan.
tayo dito sa Senado, good sponsor, nire-redact. Opo. So, any other ways that a safe environment is generated for the student without fear of repercussions? Good sponsor.
They also called the president of the SUC directly. Having a misleading...
Salamat, good sponsor. I hope these and any other ways ay nako-communicate po sa mga estudyante just to empower them to take proactive action and within the system provided by CHED and the UNIFAS Secretariat to get resolution to these situations. So dako po ako sa additional 30.1 billion pesos good sponsor na tinalakay din ni Senator Sherwin kanina. I too have no doubt that the education sector and our young people need this funding support. But I am worried that CHED's track record and low absorptive capacity could result in wastage of these important funds. The House added an additional 30.1 billion pesos to CHED's new general appropriations, allocating 14.8 billion pesos to the UACTES Tertiary Education Subsidy Fund and 15.3 billion pesos to the Tulong Dun program. Pwede po bang mag-provide ang good sponsor ng datos o kahit projections para suportahan yung additional na 30.1 billion pesos? Ilang mga benepisyaryo, pareho sa current at saka sa new grantees, ang magbebenepisyo dito, good sponsor?
Your Honor, this representation has no way of giving Her Honor information on how the tulong dunong of 15 billion will be implemented. None. So, as I've said in the earlier, it's a
I shouldn't expect you to be a mind reader, good sponsor.
yes.
Okay po.
I can try. I have an imaginative mind. But no, we do not know. Now, as for, but I just want to point out that there is a 14.7, so almost 15 billion budget for tests.
Yes.
And if I just use Her Honor's question, if I connect this to the discussion we had with the chairman of the Committee on Education, Senator Gatchalian, currently the subsidy given to private school students is 60,000. It was reduced to 20,000 for 2025, but very recently the board said 27,000. So that's still less than half of the 60,000 they have been receiving the past few years. So definitely an increase in tests will help, because the 27,000 can be augmented to at least bring it back to 60,000. I don't know how many, kasi yung 15 billion, 14.78 billion, at 20,000 per beneficiary, that is 750,000 beneficiaries, 750,000. Currently, the test beneficiaries are roughly 400 plus, 600 na. So, itong 600 will now be
25%
receiving
more.
a reduced amount of 27, as I mentioned, right? So, if this additional 14B would be given to 750,000 beneficiaries, so the first 600 can get that 20 and will almost be brought back to the 60,000 that they're receiving. So for me, okay yon, yung sa test. Yung sa tulong dunong, ano ba to? We assume or it is a number, 7,500. Okay. So sa tulong dunong, the grant is 7,500 per SEM or 15,000 a year. And that is 1 million beneficiaries. The problem is, as I mentioned earlier, the following year, they have to be absorbed by tests. And we are only at 600. How would we absorb 1 million? How? So next year, I was asking them, where will we find the funding for that? And currently, the completion rate for the beneficiaries that we have been, which is 60,000 for private schools and 40,000 for public. If UNIFAS will continue with their plan of reducing this, then as we had discussed with Senator Gatchalian, most likely there will be consequences. Less will be able to finish, because it would appear now that if you look at 27 and the computation before, when they set it at 60, 20,000 was for tuition and the 40 was for all needs to go to school. 7,000 na lang yon.
That's right.
Na pagkasyahin lahat-lahat ng pangangailangan, from food to transportation to school materials, projects, so on and so forth, for the year. So that's going to be tough, Mr. President.
Well, salamat good sponsor na kahit hindi reader ang good sponsor, at least nakapaggawa nga ng ilang projections.
Scenarios.
Yes, or scenarios given the requirements to the students at yung changing amounts na iga-grant and yung mandates nung original programs. So dito po sa pareho sa TES at saka sa tulong-dunong, predetermined po ba yung beneficiaries? And paano iso-sustain sila yung funding sa mga items na ito mula sa CHED? So simpleng tatanggapin ba ng CHED yung pondong ito, yung dagdag na pondong ito, good sponsor?
To a large extent, the test beneficiaries are predetermined because they will continue giving the same beneficiary for the freshman year all the way to the
Fourth,
senior year.
yes.
As I mentioned, doon naman sa tulong-dunong, yung beneficiaries niyan must then be absorbed by test. So in that sense, predetermined. But ang tulong-dunong kasi can be availed of, I think there's not really any specific standard. The income lang of 400,000. So for so long as the beneficiary would fit that bracket, then anyone, any student can apply for that,
All right.
Mr. President.
So, yung tanong na how to sustain, kailangan may capacity yung isang programa by sophomore year of the students originally supported by the first program ay masalo sila. So, will CHED simply accept the fund as they are appropriated right now?
Well, assuming that after the BICAM, this is still
Yes.
there, I guess. Wala naman silang choice na hindi accept yung fund. Yes, they will accept it, Mr. President. You know, I'm guessing, I don't know if it's Her Honor, if it was part of her follow-up questions or the presiding officer now. Remember the number that CHED gave us earlier was 1.6 million applicants. So based on my discussion now with Her Honor, where I said that sa test, lalabas siya ng 750,000 beneficiaries at 20,000 per person. But it's actually now 27, so mababawasan ng konti yung 750. Baka naman yun yung formula ng House. Kasi nga 1.6 eh. So they have now 1M. But again, I'm just guessing.
Yes, the good sponsor is maybe a little more successfully mind reading. Opo. And pwede po bang magkaroon ng idea, good sponsor, paano yung subsidies, parehong yung test at saka yung tulong-dunong, ay ni-utilize by the receiving HEIs para i-improve yung pinag-uusapan din ng good sponsor at ni Senator Sherwin kanina, para i-improve yung kanilang carrying capacity o service capacity. Halimbawa, may income-derived ba yung mga HEIs, good sponsor?
Yun lang po sa part ng test, 20,000 for 20,000 goes to the schools, goes to the SUCs. So they will then use that. For private schools only, no, because yung sa public schools wala na silang idadagdag dahil covered na yun dun sa higher education fund. So for the private schools, they will get the 20,000.
And hopefully yun yung paraan na once yung mga tulong-dunong freshmen lilipat sa test bilang sophomores, na improve yung carrying o service capacity ng HEIs sa pamamagitan din ng test. Is that how it could work, good sponsor?
Sorry, I
It's
missed
all right,
that
good
last
sponsor.
statement. It's just
Opo.
a
So, continuing to think aloud with the good sponsor, so ito ba isang paraan, whether by design or by the way the programs operate, evolve, and interact with each other, na by the time yung mga tulong-dunong freshmen maging sophomores at lilipat sa test sa susunod na school year, nakapag-improve ng service or carrying capacity yung HEIs na nag-i-implement ng test para masalo itong mga original tulong-dunong students, good sponsor.
Sa public school, wala hong papasok na funding sa SUCs kasi nga that amount will just go to the student for their own needs.
Right.
So, hindi nakakatulong sa carrying
Sa public
capacity.
schools. Okay.
Sa private, ano ba yun? Kanya, bigyan mo 7.5. Anong part doon ang ibibigay nila? Or buo yun? Kailangan ibigay? Ano, bahala na siya. So kung kulang siya ng 2. Okay. So sa private school, the way it works, that 7,500 per sem that is received, they can choose to augment the tuition fee that's due, or if the tuition fee is within the 7,500, they can use that entire amount. So yun nakakatulong sa private, pero sa public wala.
Wala. Okay. So yung private lang ang pwedeng mag, in a way, counterpart dun sa subsidies mula sa CHED. Salamat. And no other income as such na de-derive ang HEIs? Good sponsor.
None.
Alright. Salamat, sponsor. So, dako po ako sa absorptive capacity at saka deficiencies. So, while these scholarship programs hold immense potential, it's essential to ensure that the CHED has the capacity to implement them, along with its other programs, implement them effectively, and utilize the allocated funds efficiently. To this end, I'd like to draw attention to some concerning data on CHED's fund utilization rate. During the Senate Committee budget hearing, CHED reported low obligation and disbursement rates for fiscal year 2024, with only 27% of funds obligated and 22% disbursed. Chair De Vera noted that the Commission is struggling to obligate and disburse funds due to the 6 billion peso augmentation allocated for this year. I firmly believe in the importance of making education more accessible through scholarships. However, paano po pinaplano ng CHED i-manage ang dagdag na 30.1 billion pesos sa pondo habang ngayon pa lang humaharap na siya sa hamon sa kasalukuyang 6 billion peso na augmentation? I don't want a situation in which students have to wait years to receive their scholarships again, good sponsor.
Well, actually, Mr. President, the chairman did say that the 6 billion, the 6 billion of tulong-dulong funds was difficult, no, to disburse. It was difficult because it was a big change. It's a big amount. That's why we always go back to, in as much as all of us here would like to support education or any other important programs, you also look at the the absorptive capacity
Yes.
of the agency. But I can't resist to go back to, kasi what they received was additional tests and additional tulong-dunong. Yung test kasi talaga ay standby, dapat inaugment nyo na lang yung existing para nga kesa sa binabaan nyo, tapos dinagdagan nyo, tapos nahihirapan din kayo mag-implement. Di dapat, anyway, that's my position.
So, difficult nga daw yung paggastos ng 6 billion pesos. Ngayon, nakaharap sa dagdag na 5 times that amount. So, may plano ba ang CHED paano i-manage yung 5 times na sinabi nila nahihirapan silang i-manage sponsor?
So, Mr. President, as I've already mentioned, this representation is supportive of returning to the previous amount, the test subsidy of 60,000 and 40,000.
Yes.
So I was just asking Ed and UNIFA's executive director, since they were nodding their head vigorously when her honor asked a question, kung kaya ba ni nod their head to my question, kung mahihirapan sila to disburse, and definitely yes, mahihirapan. So sabi ko, if you just use that amount to go back to not even increase, just to go back to the former amount being given to the test beneficiaries, then again they're nodding their head vigorously that yes, that would be much easier to implement. So that's one option. But again, this was a insertion of the House. So I don't know if we can touch that.
Oo nga pala,
We
good
can try,
sponsor.
we can
Good,
discuss with them.
Right, which is what the BICAM is for. So, but good point, good sponsor. Salamat sa paalalang iyon. In any case, nanggaling man sa House, as the good sponsor indirectly said, pagdating sa BICAM, pwedeng maging subject ng parehong houses at parehong panels. So, oo nga, kung bumalik tayo sa 60,000 per student, at tama po ba, good sponsor, 750,000 beneficiaries? Tama po ba yung nakuha kong...
Yeah, so basically, I just made a rough computation that at
Yes.
14.7, which is roughly 15B, at 20,000 per beneficiaries, that But I said I only learned today that the Unified Board brought up again the subsidy to private school students to 27.
Yes.
So mag-iiba yung numbers na ng konti.
Okay po. But at least salamat, good sponsor, na opening up that conversation about paano mas optimally magagamit ng CHED yung halagang ito to achieve their mandates. Yun yung magiging huling paksa ko after I finish with this topic. So, additionally, for fiscal year 2023, approximately 18.3 billion pesos worth of higher education subsidies were found to have deficiencies, as highlighted in the 2023 COA report. The same issues persist, including delays in the release of tertiary education subsidies to students, overpayments and duplicate payments, unliquidated fund transfers, and insufficient documentation to support disbursements. Ano pong institutional reforms ang ini-implement ng CHED, good sponsor? Meron po bang plano para i-streamline yung processes, palakasin yung monitoring mechanisms, at i-enhance yung overall capacity ng ahensya, i-manage yung mga programang ito ng mabisa, good sponsor?
So actually, Mr. President, those observations of COA were, CHED replied to them, and after that, they already were given an unqualified opinion. So basically, they have responded satisfactory to those concerns.
And anong mga reforms ang in-implement nila or are implementing to have received that unqualified opinion? And any plans to sustain receiving unqualified opinions?
Okay. Okay. Things like the automation of the free higher ed and then the land bank card disbursement, those kind of interventions or changes.
So yung mga recommendations po ng task force report line sa reforms na ini-implement nila, good sponsor?
That is correct, Mr. President.
Salamat. So, huli sa paksang ito, pwede bang mag-request sa Commission na magsumite ng comprehensive plan na dedetalye kung paano nila ini-intend na efficiently i-obligate, disburse yung kanilang pondo para siguruhin na yung mga scholars matatanggap yung subsidy nila sa tamang panahon, good sponsor?
That is all in the COA response, so we'll give Her Honor a copy of that COA response.
Thank you, good sponsor. Alright, sa huling paksa ko na lang po, good sponsor, sa interpellation na to, tungkol sa free higher education and SUC's deficits. So continuing in that line of thinking, opened up with the good sponsor a few minutes ago. I ask these questions because I also want to make sense with as little mind reading as possible. I want to make sense also of the position to propose such a substantial increase, effectively doubling the net proposed budget, that increase for scholarships, while other critical needs in higher education remain unmet. It's no secret that our state universities and colleges, as key implementers of the UACTE Act, are riddled with challenges, particularly budget deficiencies. These deficiencies have accumulated over the past years, impacting their ability to provide quality education and support services to students. Adding to this concern, I understand that a portion of the budget for UWACTE, free higher education, specifically 7.06 billion pesos under purpose number 10, was transferred to unprogrammed appropriations. Eto na naman po tayo, good sponsor. This amount, as I understand it, was intended to pay the arrears for free higher education in SUCs under the UWACTE, accumulated in 2022 and 2023. This transfer to unprogrammed appropriations effectively deprioritizes this crucial budget line item, which should be dedicated to reimbursing SUCs and covering their deficiencies. It raises concerns about government's commitment to fully funding the UWACTE Act and ensuring the financial stability of our SUCs. Pwede po bang i-confirm ng good sponsor itong transfer at magbigay linaw sa current status ng mga arrears na ito? Ganong kalaki o ganong karami sa 7.06 billion pesos ang na-release at naibayad sa SUC's good sponsor?
Sorry, was Her Honor's last question how much of the 6.7 was released?
Yes, and paid to the SUCs.
Okay. In any. Okay. So, this representation shares the observation and the concern of Her Honor. She is that 6.7 billion was placed under unprogrammed appropriation.
6.7 billion good sponsor or 7.06 billion?
Ang nasa akin is 6.7.
6.7
Let me
lamang.
check.
Okay po.
Anyway, let me confirm that amount. But so as I was saying that so there's this amount which we're still questioning if it's 6.7 or 7 point, is it 7.6?
7.06.
7.06. Okay, let's check what that amount is. It's under unprogrammed appropriations. As of now, none of it has been released, but this same amount already appears in the GAA for 2025. I do just have 20. No, no. Why is this 2023?
It's already in the unprogrammed appropriations for this year, 2025.
Yeah, I know, but you said it's in the 2025. It's in the GAA.
It's in the budget
Of 2025.
2024 this year.
So this was 2023?
These are the arrears for 2022 and 2023. This is unprogrammed appropriations.
1 minute suspension.
Session suspended.
Ready to resume?
Session resumed.
Okay. So first of all, Mr. President, we confirm that the amount in the GA is 7.06 billion.
And it's in the unprogrammed appropriations, good sponsor?
Yes, it is in the program. However, very recently, DBM has informed the SUCs that they can prepare the billings for this. As to whether they will actually be able to fund it, this representation wouldn't know. But that's a good sign that they've been asked to prepare their billing.
For the full sum
Yes,
across SUCs of 7.06 billion pesos.
asked to prepare
Thank
their
you.
billing for that.
Thank you, good sponsor. Okay. And the current status of these arrears, they're still at that sum of 7.06 billion pesos.
Yes, because there hasn't been any initial payments made. But what I just wanted to add to the discussion, consistent with the discussion with Senator Gatchalian, is that, again, the amount, part of the reason why there's this difference in amount is because of the DBM manner of computation, which is based on the enrollment 2 years before, and what is provided by law, which is the projection of the SUC. And what I added into the discussion is that that projection should also be based on carrying capacity, because, you know, an SUC may to accommodate all the young people of college age, but have no carrying capacity for that. And I think that should be a very important part of the discussion and the computation, Mr. President.
Before we leave, my last question, good sponsor, about these arrears ng mga SUCs. Pwede po bang makahingi ng input through the good sponsor mula sa PASUK? Maaari bang malaman mula sa PASUK kung may collectibles or receivables pa sila? At kung mayroon, magkano in particular mula sa UACTE, good sponsor?
Anyway, Mr. President. Na-minus na yan. Minus na yan, okay. When? So actually, Mr. President, for 2022 and 2023, the total amount due is 6.7 billion. This is why my amount was 6.7 billion.
Yes,
I
I
still do not
understand.
understand why there's a difference between the 6.7 and the 7.06.
Right.
But at least I know now where the 6.7 came from. That is the amount from PASOK on the amount due them. And this already includes almost 1 billion paid by CHED to reduce that amount, which was 1 billion pesos more. Okay? So 6.7 until 2023. For 2024, the record of PASOK based on the estimate, more or less, coming from the different SUKs is an additional 2.3 billion there. So
Maraming salamat para doon, good sponsor. I was hoping that the amount for 2024 added amounts for 2022 and 23 would total the 7.06, but it even goes beyond to 8
Yeah.
billion plus. So
It does.
a bit of a mystery nga po where 7.06 has come from. And bukod po or dagdag dito sa arrears, pwede po bang i-inform tayo ng good sponsor sa current total amount of budget deficits kaugnay ng free higher education for SUKs mula fiscal years 2022 to 2025. So projected until next year, good sponsor.
for 2025, they project that 3.69, so 3.7 billion in addition.
In addition, in addition to the amounts we were talking about earlier, good sponsor. So sorry, where is that? From 2022 to 2020, 6.7 billion. And then for 2024, 2.3 billion.
Yes.
So 9 billion running total.
Yes.
Plus projected 3.7 billion next year, 12.7 billion
That is
total.
correct, yes.
12.7. So really quite a significant amount, good sponsor. So to my last question, so there is a deficit of 12.7 billion in the budget for free higher education for SUCs. Meanwhile, an additional 30.1 billion, or almost 3 times as much, was added to the CHED budget, even as SUCs experience these budget deficits to provide free higher education to their students. Given the recurring issues that the CHED encounters, my concern is that the CHED will be unable to disburse these funds while we neglect the fundamental needs of our SUCs and the full implementation of free higher education. Hindi kaya, good sponsor, na mas prudent approach ay unang magtaya na fully fund yung free higher education budgets ng SUCs, lalo na habang naghihirap ang komisyon na i-obligate at i-disburse yung kanilang fiscal year 2024 funds, good sponsor.
This representation agrees with Her Honor's observations on the clear gap, no, in the funding requirements. But on the other hand, just want to reiterate that merely funding free higher education without comprehensively analyzing what is the absorptive capacity of every SUC and ensuring the delivery of quality education will not solve the problem. Simply adding more students based on projected desires of people to enroll does not automatically translate to quality education. And as we have said, there is already a finding from PIDS that 40% of our graduates are overqualified. Does that mean that they are not intelligent or not well educated? I don't think so. It may mean that they're job mismatch, which is why we passed a law on that. It may also mean that biggest takeaway that the courses that they finish are not aligned with the job opportunities available. So I think this discussion cannot be simplified by simply saying that just more funding in free higher education. It really must be a comprehensive analysis of what is the absorptive capacity of every SUC and how we can strengthen the delivery of education per SUC.
Salamat, good sponsor. At talagang kailangan niyang comprehensive analysis because indeed, it's not a simple situation. Maraming moving parts, factors or variables. Mga simplistic lang na mga akala natin solusyon which may create even more problems. And I appreciate na binigyang diin ng good sponsor even throughout the whole interpellation at kahit sa huling tanong na to, yung mga variables about the absorptive capacity of each SUC. Kanina, in fairness, pinag-usapan din natin yung absorptive capacity ng CHED mismo. And then also for the SUCs, yung delivering quality education. It makes me think na baka maging mabunga para kung paano babanggain itong mga variables na ito among others, no, yung arrears at saka budget deficits ng mga SUCs, yung absorptive capacity ng mga SUCs at ng CHED sa ngayon, and yung delivery of quality education. Salamat din po dun sa finding ng PIDS. In fact, yung isang observation dito on the side, so 40% of our graduates are overqualified, and sabi nga ng good sponsor, probably the biggest or one of the biggest takeaways is jobs mismatch. So I would think it's not a matter of, definitely not a matter of reducing the quality of our graduates, but improving the quality of the jobs in our economy. So outside the education system per se, pero in the economy, generating more decent jobs para mag-match dun sa mga graduates natin. And so I also, well, salamat sa agreement ng good sponsor sa observation ng representasyong ito. And I would also continue along her line of thinking to say na sana mapag-aralan nga, makapaggawa ng isang comprehensive analysis paano pagbabanggain o pagsasamahin yung mga variables na ito. So in the same spirit na pinag-isipan kanina ng good sponsor, ano kaya mailaan ng CHED yung dagdag na 30.1 billion pesos ngayon para itaas yung value ng subsidy, lalong-lalo na sa mga test students. I think it's still worth exploring, at least for a while, no? Hanggang sa BICAM, yung paano pwedeng mag-complement yung optimal use ng CHED sa dagdag na pondo niya at yung mas pagsalo dun sa budget deficits ng mga SUCs as they project it also until next year. Dahil it's a little over 1/3 lamang naman nung dagdag na pondo para sa CHED. So, but I'll leave it at that for now, good sponsor. Huling follow-up na lang dun sa kung may sagot na po ang commission tungkol sa unang tanong.
Meron na
nitong
po.
presentasyon. Alright, salamat, good sponsor.
So Her Honor asked about the implementation of the Safe Spaces Law. I am told that all SUCs now have a committee on decorum and investigation
CODI.
that handles cases covered by the Safe Spaces Law. All SUCs have orientation programs for faculty, students, and staff on the law, and that the board of the SUCs handle cases on safe spaces violation and have actually suspended and dismissed faculty and employees. And penalties may be submitted if Her Honor would like to see it,
Yes,
which
please,
I'm
good
sure she
sponsor.
would. So
Opo, you are
pakisubmit
right, good
din.
sponsor.
And then with respect to GIs which have conducted conducted orientation, the initial data shows that 694 of them, 694 have conducted the orientation.
Salamat, good sponsor. So, 100% ang nagko-comply nitong mga various obligations under the Safe Spaces Act. And the 100% is accounted for by 694, tama, HEIs inspected by the CHED.
All, so yes.
Or 600 SUCs. Salamat, good sponsor. How about private HEIs po? Or lahat-lahat po ba yon?
There's only 100 plus SUCs. So
SUCs.
that's public
Lahat.
and private. So, sorry, to be
Alright.
clear, all SUCs
Yes.
have complied. But the 600 orientation covers
94, given the sum.
It's 690 kasi
694.
minus 100, ilan na tayo? Ilan na tayong SUC?
690.
581.
581. Okay, and then, so a little more than 100 SUCs.
Yes, Mr. President.
All right. So, abangan ko na lang po, good sponsor, yung mga hinging mga dokumento at saka datos, and we'll continue engaging in these issues with the help of the good sponsor. Maraming salamat po. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, to our Deputy Minority Floor Leader.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move for a minute suspension.
1 minute suspension.
Mr. President.
Resumed.
President, next to interpellate is none other than the Honorable Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. I move that he recognized.
We recognize the gentleman from Taguig, Senator Alan Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader. The good sponsor yield to a couple of questions.
Of course, Mr. President.
I always have to get her permission.
Hindi na umuwi questions ng mga nandito kanina. But it's okay.
Except for one topic, Madam Chair, on the scholarship, but not exactly the same question as Senator. The same concern. Huwag daw kasi umulit questions ko. So sabi ko, hindi
I only say
exactly.
that to him for the record. Yung iba pinatagan ko umulit.
May I start with UP, and please be patient with some. Good evening, Mr. Ched Chairman, and to the Ched family commissioners. No. A little bit of patience, basic facts about UP. I'll make my point kasi regarding UP PGH. So, Madam, as a former member of the Board of Regents and also as former chairman of the committee on higher education and a graduate of UP Liman, in fact, member of the last UP volleyball team to be the UAAP champion, how many campuses does the university now have? I mean, most of us here,
To the
just to refresh
to the
our
current UP, to answer your own question.
I'd rather President Gigio, because I just want to make my point regarding PGH. So now we have
Open. Okay. 9 campuses, including the Open University, counting the Open University.
And so when UP was first established, we only had one campus, right? Yeah. And at that time, did we already call it the UP system or just UP lang, no?
No.
Yeah. So it became a system when we had different campuses. I actually went to UPLB first with Senator Miggs, former Senate President, before going to UP Diliman. And is it correct that one reason you want to have a system is you want to have the same standards for all campuses? Because if it's not a system, baka yung quality mo in one campus won't be the same quality. I mean, it's the same as McDonald's or Jollibee or hotels, di ba? Universities. You make sure that the quality of education, brand that you're selling, not only to the students but to the employers, are the same. Is that correct?
Basically, yes.
Okay. So that goes to my main question, which is, how many PGH hospitals do we now have?
1. PGH Hospital? 1 plus... Ano yung 2, Clark?
Part is a polyclinic.
Okay.
That's currently we have, no? But ayan, ayan.
Okay. Okay.
Liman, tapos na lecture. HSBP about ready. And studies done. But the Carmona is mag-open na yan. Baka mag-breakground ng construction by
Okay.
January.
Ano itong daba? Ano to?
Wala.
Okay.
But it's already, the plans are already there as well.
Okay, okay. So currently, Mr. President, there are 2, PGH Manila and PGH New Clark City, which provides ambulatory care. It will be a 200-bed hospital, which is for construction, and the focus will be sports and wellness, Mr. President. Would His Honor like me to read the future plans?
And this is also just on that answer. And the one in Clark is also going to be a team.
Yes, all
Yes.
PGH,
Okay.
all our academic health units.
No need for the exact plans. As you said, I do sit on the board at present, but more of, there are plans for more
Yes.
PGH teaching
But-
hospitals.
It's nice to put it on
Yes,
record
yes,
so that
please.
others can hear, and our minority floor leader is also a UP graduate, is intently listening. So, PGH Diliman, is going to be a 300-bed project with 12 advanced specialty centers, 12 advanced specialty centers. And then this will actually complement the specialty hospitals PGH in the Quezon City area. And then there is PGH Carmona, which is a private and a partnership, private and government facility funding, which will be
Occupational and industrial health hospital.
okay. So it's an occupational and industrial health hospital, and this is 300 beds. And then there is PGH Mindanao.
That's yet planned. We have to
That
decide whether
is
it's
still
now
a
or
secret, which I just divulged.
No, the reason I asked that, Madam Chair, is many of us here had the privilege to the heartache, the tears, also the effort, the crying in this hall, and for better facilities for PGH, di ba? Those days where everyone wanted to study there because sa ibang school, one student, 6, 8 sila per cadaver, pero sa 1:1, pero kung nag-aaral ka sa UP or nagre-residency ka, kung may allowance ka man konti, nauubos mo rin ang pambili lang ng...
Sorry, I need to interrupt. Lumang-luma na yung example mo, Cadaver, kasi nga meron tayong simulation, what do you call it? Simlab.
Yes,
Simlab.
but that's my point, is to give a flashback of what it was before. So my point is, the way we see PGH now, we want to make sure every branch of PGH that we do have will not start out the way it was before. Diba? So meaning, if President Gigil now was president of Wendy's or of Jollibee, he wants to make sure that every single branch is as good as the other. Diba? Hindi yung meron kang super magandang EV ngayon na jeep, and then meron kang pinakamaluma na diesel na jeep. So that goes to my question. Right now, UP has chancellors in each campus and then has the board of directors and a UP president. How is, let's say, how do we envision the administration or the system of PGH? So we do have a Dr. Gapis, so he's what's the official position in UP Manila and PGH? PGH director. Oh. So is he PGH director of both UP Manila and also of Clark? Yeah.
That is correct.
So once we have more, and especially with the new highway to Clark, which is 2 hours away siguro, 2 to 4 hours, depende sa traffic from PGH, Manila, parang kaya pa, di ba? But are we envisioning that dadating yung time na parang tumbas na chancellor sa bawat PGH, tapos may director ka or may president ka for all PGH?
So this will now be like a systems-led head, and this would be the vice president for hospital administration.
Yes.
So
Or health.
there's only a couple of reasons why can I share just one reason? There was a foreigner in our old church ate sa BF Parañaque. He's just to sell to sell schools abroad, offer scholarships and try to bridge Filipinos getting scholarships abroad in the 80s and 90s. Yes, so you remember her name and what he taught me once I entered government is, in the Philippines now, when you build, let's say, a DepEd school, you finish the school, then you hire the principal. Sabi niya, it's the most basic mistake that husbands do, which is they build their wife's kitchen. Diba? You don't build your wife's kitchen if she wants a kitchen. You ask her and you allow her to build it kasi siya naman ang gamit noon. Diba? It's like asking naman your wife to build you your man cave. You might be happy, but you might not. No? So the point is, he was saying, wala pa yung school, i-hire mo na yung principal, i-appoint mo na doon para habang binibuild. So, in one sense, I was tempted to say, kailan natin lalagyan ng pondo, kailan natin gagawin, and I don't really know which part of that is for the board and which part is for legislation. But I do know that legislation yung budget. So I would suggest lang, if at the appropriate time, the chairman of the committee on Senator Grace po and the senior vice chairperson, Senator Pia, would consider putting some money na there. Because for me, the sooner you appoint a head of the whole system, he or she will already be part of, I know the work is now part of planning everything, but at what point will it be too tedious for him to be managing 2 hospitals and then planning the rest of the system, no? So I just want to leave that there as a suggestion and, just draw from the wisdom of the system as a whole, no?
So basically, every hospital would have a director, and overseeing all of them are is the UP system vice president. Systems level na.
Yes, but are we also going to go the way of the campuses that you'll have a hospital director? So like, di ba, parang hindi natuloy yung St. Luke's dapat. Pero meron kang medical director ng St. Luke's BGC, mayroon kang St. Luke's QC, pero may presidente ka ng korporasyon or to make sure that all the services of St. Luke's are the same.
So are in planning stage right offhand. The response that this representation gave is the initial discussions they have, because that's how they want to operate it from the systems level. But yeah, all of these have to be built, and it would.
My recommendation lang is that if they need a little bit of money and a push or a special allocation, because it takes DBM at least 3 to 6 months to, di ba, assuming everything's in order to put the position. I would assume that will also be an elective position by the Board of Regents. So, I mean, there's so much to do that even if you wanted it next month or 6 months from now, probably it will take 6 months to a year to put that all together. So whatever we can do in next year's budget, whether in terms of finances or special provisions, I think we should do, because it's just too risky, no, to plan the whole system. Remember, here in the Senate, we're supposed to be more, how do I call it, less parochial. But as former speaker, I don't see anything about being parochial. So in the same way, if there's anything about our hometown of Taguig, Pateros, Muntinlupa, Bulacan, I will mention it. But remember, anytime you have something of excellence, there is pressure from a popular mayor, governor, congressman to put up a branch there. So the sooner a strict head, the right standards, the more sure we are that the lobbying will be, how do I put it, restrained. And Senator Pia is not a stranger when she handled both education and a couple other committees. She made sure that hindi pwedeng pumasa dito yung pagka wala yung basic requirements. But even those requirements were internal lang sa Senate. Does PGH also does a research?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that is
So,
their strength, actually.
I'd just like to make a suggestion and wonder how much it would cost if the POR and PGH agrees to do the research. I had the privilege of, and me, I think here, of having from simple paperwork, bureaucracy, they can be bureaucratic without red tape. So I remember when I had to have a procedure, kapal nung papers, sabi na, do you have to have name and signature and all of that? Yes. Here, is this your name, your passport? I forgot my passport. It was 5 a.m. Do you have a picture of it? Showed my picture. Send it to me. So she printed out my name, signed one, then printed out my name with for all 15 or 10 or 8 forms. So in one sense, you need a signature in all forms, but in another sense, sila na nag-print. And yung ng stats mo, yung anong passport, etc., magdadala isang tao lang. No, it was a full production number. So, I mean, we've gone so far, no, but what I notice is halos lahat ng doktor doon, meron silang sign. Pag consultation, ito yung amount. And I asked them, why do you have that amount? He said, so that whatever room you get, you know this is what you're gonna pay. So he said, so hindi katulad sa Philippines, kasi karamihan naman ng nurse doon, Pilipina. So, Pilipino talaga kausap ko, no? Hindi English. So sabi ko, so dito ba, hawa, I get the best room? Sir, kung 200 yung consultation kay doc, you get the best room, 200. Hindi ganun sa Pilipinas. Sa Pilipinas, if you get a better room, the doctor's fees, everything is up. And ang claim ng hospitals is to subsidize. Diba? Para daw mas mahirap. And not to criticize, I know it's hard to run a hospital. I know in the past, until now, diba? Pag hindi nakapagbayad, and then we're having all sorts of problems with PhilHealth. This is my main point. I think the hospital owners will definitely be biased if you do the study of comparing health system with other health systems works. And I think the DOH would probably also have its own bias. They might not be biased, but they will be biased. But the PGH they're running a hospital, so they know how to run a hospital. They're researchers, so they do know how to have scientific studies. So I think before I retire as a senator or as a legislator, have a scientific study of whether or not our present system is the best for the Filipino patient and would sustain talaga build of hospitals, or if we just inherited this in the 60s, 70s and just decided that it's good and continued to do it. No? There are a couple other studies that are different, but any one of us who goes to a campaign would know people complain about even sa AIC sa PhilHealth, di ba? Sasabihin nila you can only give kung ward ka. Di ba? Tapos pero kung may kaya ka ng konti, of course you'd like a private room kasi may sakit ka na, di ba? May ano pa. So you have all of this unintended consequence of our present system of having to by the way, it's not unique to us. If Ate P, the chairperson, remembers, every time Dad is hospitalized in the US, he has no choice to have his blood test in the hospital. And since he did not have insurance, it was anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000. But every time he was an outpatient, the Filipino nurse will with him, sir, go across the street. It's about $2. So each health system has their own problems. May butas naman talaga. Wala namang perfect na system. No? What I'm saying lang is that since namulat ako sa politika, sa councilor in 1992, I have not seen any change. I've seen hospitals getting, doctors getting better, our laws getting better, PhilHealth getting better. A lot of things have gotten better, but I haven't seen a shift or a game changer in the way we look at our health system, di ba? But if PGH was the only hospital in the country, I've seen PGH become a game changer. I mean, for that matter, siguro also Vicente Soto, kasi naabot ko rin nung talagang mga doctors at nagpapatakbo ng Vicente Soto. No? So, I don't need an answer, but if they're interested, I push for that, and of course, we know how much.
They already said yes. So just give us you can give it to me at the end of the day. Yeah. What to a comprehensive research, no? What our current system is, how we can improve it, if there are other models that are better.
Yeah.
Okay. You can just let us know by tomorrow so we can include it in the committee report.
Last point, walang duda yung pride, walang duda yung bilib sa taga-UP, sa UP, sa ating professors, etc. But this is just a challenge for us all na taga-UP na nandito, and siyempre nagpapatakbo ng UP. President Gigil is a student council, he is do better. Ano ang total enrollment more or less ng lahat ng students ngayon? 66,000. Okay.
66,000.
Ano ang total budget ng UP? 24 billion. Anong total students ng PUP?
PUP? 18?
80,000, tama ba?
83,000.
83,000. Anong total budget ng PUP?
3.4 billion.
3.4 building. So ang lamang nyo lang PUP yung letter P lang. No? Lamang kayo sa estudyante, lamang kayo sa letter P. You're consistently voted as top 3, or I think sa Pilipinas, top 1 na gusto ng mga employers. But you're getting almost 12% lang, tama ba? 24 and 3 billion, so 12, 13 billion. I'm sure there are a lot of explanations, and kahit ano sabihin mo, premier university natin ng UP. I really wonder if for, let's say, for 10 years, baliktarin natin. Let's give UP 3 billion and let's give PUP 24 billion. I wonder if this hall will be filled with PUP students and USD students. Graduates. Nakatitig sa akin si... No, but, I mean,
Mr. President, I'm duty bound to share this information. So, dun sa UP budget, 1/3 of that is PG. And then there are
so
30...
so let's do that one by one. So take out 8 billion. So 16 billion pa rin compared sa 3 billion.
Yes. And then, Mr. President, there are 30 national research institutes,
Including the Philippine Genome Center.
including the Philippine Genome Center, that are funded, that are part of this, the
Okay.
remaining 16
So
billion.
how much do you remove from the 16 billion if you take out those?
I don't have that at the moment, but we can find it.
Yeah. No, so I don't
And then wait, I still have a third point. Then the UP president was looking at the PUP president and sabi niya, mas mataas ang sweldo nyo ha, mas mataas ang sweldo nyo.
Yeah, but I mean, it might not be apples to apples, di ba? It might be Chinese apple to American apples. So it's not totally exactly the same, di ba? Tesla, BYD, but you know, a polytechnic is in between a college degree and a TESDA. And I have my own qualms about TESDA because I thought precisely kaya tayo nag-K-12 para hindi mo na kailangan technical education kasi ipapasok na nila sa curriculum. Then kung gusto mo mag-college, college ka. Or kung may conditional year, TESDA man, sir, di ba, 1 year. But TESDA now has 3-year courses. So parang, ba't natin ginawang K-12 tapos TESDA? Pero if you look at the middle ground, PUP is there. So I mean, it's not a debate, but it's as we say that many of our leaders sa Supreme Court, sa Congress here are from UP, di ba? I really wonder if we give UP, let's say, another billion or 2 billion. And this goes for other universities, ha? And the chairman has been there for some time, so he's seen the development. So I have 2 quick questions for Ched. No? As you said, Madam, don't repeat. So I was just wondering, has there been a study na leadership? Is it the best model for the country vis-a-vis students, universities, etc.? Let me give, while you think about that, Chairman, and both Chairperson and Chairman, let me give you my view of history, ha? Kasi, di ba, we've always been trying to squeeze more funds for education and scholarship. From being number 2 to just 70, suddenly, nagiging kulela tayo. And there was a time during Marcos Sr. that almost 30% of national budget was on education. And President Cory's time, naging free high school, pero marami na umulit kasi nga, first year high school na, hindi pa marunong bumasa. Panahon ni President Pinoy, nakahabol na tayo, pero K-12, Pero we didn't have enough classrooms naman for then. And so ngayon, tuturuan tayo, pero ano nangyari? Half day naman lahat. So kahit ang dami, half day tayo. So when President Duterte, I cannot go into his mind, but he did not follow his economic in doing the scholarship bill. But as a compromise, ang ginawa ng implementation ng cabinet Duterte, which I was part of, is ilibre mo na lang lahat ng nasa state U. So it was like a compromise at that time, and of course, no one thought na magkaka-pandemic. Kasi pre-pandemic, napakaganda ng angat natin sa ekonomiya. Everyone na, sige, pagbigyan mo na para everyone, di ba, kasi kailangan naman talaga natin, and then we'll sort out finances. But na pandemic, maraming umalis sa private school, lumipat sa state U. Tapos yung mga state U, may pressure lahat na magtanggap. Nung nawalang pandemic, hindi naman kasya lahat ng classroom. So, I really wonder whether our state U's are operating on a, not to use the market, is it, I was reading about how Singapore was not purely capitalist, but they tried that their interventions will never really defeat or interfere too much with market forces. Because if you do, it won't be sustainable. No? So, if anyone here has a great idea of what the best system is, I'm all ears, we're all ears. But I think should have money and should do a study to pose to both the President and to Congress. Ano ba ang pinakamaganda? So, let me give you lang tagig experience. Instead of paying the universities, we allot 10 to 50,000 per student. Tapos bahala ka na kung saan mag-aral. So, we have about 40,000 scholars. And choice talaga nila eh. Meron talagang sa UP, then we're willing to give them 50,000, pero gusto nung parents nila malapit lang sa TCU. Meron gusto malapit lang, pero talaga na hindi pa rin kasya yung 30,000 to maglasal at Teo. So, iba talaga eh. But what we saw is that we forced that university to accept everyone and then cap kung magkano yung tuition, nagkakagulo-gulo talaga yung actual cost nila eh. So I know it's different for everyone, for PMA, for PNPA, for PMMA, for TUP, PUP, UP. I was wondering na, so after, when did we pass? Was it 2017, 2018? 17, no? So, 7 years na. If we study this year, baka before the 10th year, we can make the recommendations kung anong, during your term din, Chairman, kasi nagsimula din yan during your term. But, you know, I'm not criticizing per se. It's better to have that system na napakaraming scholar. But I'm just saying, there's a better system pa that allow our state use to compete with the private sector. And then also allow to be more entrepreneurial. To make my point, no, to PUP, magkano cost per unit? 12 pesos. Magkano cost per unit sa UP? 150. Ang layo eh. Diba? No, I'm not only your I think it's also market forces eh. Diba? 12 pesos.
12 pesos
And then,
is 1,500.
ang layo. So it was like that. To be fair, really fast, medyo ganun na.
No, it was because I was chair of the committee from 2013 to 2016, and that discrepancy across all over SUCs already existed.
Yes, but like a Unifast, napeg na yung sa PUP, and for them to increase, you have to get CHED approval, right? And for
All.
CHED to give you a approval, you have to balance the budget of Unifast. Diba? So it's not the actual cost eh. It's the cost in accordance with your making do with present money. But in a better world, where we give the money to the university, we will have cost and cost not impeding PUP from having better courses and better facilities and better graduates, etc. So again, no, lahat naman tayo dito agree sa problema. Hindi ko sinasabing tayo may solusyon, sila wala. I'm just saying, academe na rin naman ang best sa research. Baka that could be a good research prop. By the way, Ed doing some work on that. Pero for me kasi, and I'd like to give the credit, of course, to Senator Will, Senator Joel, to officially to Attorney F, to Carol, no. You've been incredible, no. But I still feel na the SUCs are in a genre by itself, di ba? So vis-a-vis use, vis-a-vis TESDA and everything. And I think the next 3 years could really be, you know, we could a game changer kind of law if everyone comes together and agree. To just shock you, no? So nasya-shock na tayo sa 1.5. Okay. What's the total budget of the LGU, of all SUCs? More or less, ballpark.
100.
117 billion. That's only 10% of DPWH budget.
Sorry, to be clear, that's the Senate version proposal for 2025.
So, for the last 2 years, more or less, 1 trillion yung DPWH, 350 billion doon, anti-flood, ganun pa rin ang flood natin. So, can you imagine if you double the budget of SUCs, baka ma-flood tayo ng research at estudyante rather than bahang-baha. To be fair to DPWH, hindi lahat yun kasalanan nila. Climate change is part of it. But, for example, Project NOAA, which knows kung saan area ang dapat ingatan, hindi DPWH sa kanilang flood control. Ang point ko, nung araw in academic or, you know, in saying dagdagan ng pondo ng state use kasi wala kang pagkukunan. But with a 6 trillion peso budget and 1 trillion goes to DPWH and people are doubting that the 300 billion are actually giving you the results for anti-flooding, I think anyone would say that education is a better investment or is at least as good investment as infrastructure. And the best proof there is Singapore. Singapore has no natural resources. At that time, they did not have ports, they did not have IT, finance, etc. So they decided that they will focus on their people, diba? On educating their people. Yun yung natural resource. So I'm hoping that a study, and it's a debate. If I tell you 2050, CHED or UNIFAS, debate. But if CHED comes out with a study regarding the best scholarship program and regarding how investment it is to get people to go to best state universities, I think no one can debate that and hopefully we'll come up with a better law and system.
Well, just a very quick response to that lengthy and exhaustive observation. We don't need research to tell us that the budget for the tertiary education subsidy, otherwise known as TES, was reduced drastically per student. Now, we had this lengthy discussion with our colleagues before His Honor took the podium. And basically, what was previously until 2020, private education students of 60,000 has now been reduced to 27,000, and what was previously for public school students at 40,000 is now only at 20,000. If we can even, so the point I'm making, which I know is also the concern of our colleague, my brother, now for 2025, will have to make with a smaller amount to finish college. And the reason that the UNIFAS made that decision is they have so many applicants. But now we will have more applicants with less funding. And that amount is actually 15 billion. And then there is another 15 billion in tulong dunong. So we don't need research to tell us where we can also work
First,
with some
I'm sorry if
funding.
it's lengthy, but you only listen to me lengthily when... Yes. She's
I'm
not
basically
denying.
just saying
Okay.
my response will be very short to all the observations that His Honor made.
Okay.
I'm not
Secondly,
denying.
I do agree with you that, on that point, but what I'm saying is that how much of that point system, just to quickly jump, and hindi ko to pakahabaan, di ba? Ask them, di ba? Magkano yung ayuda for 600 billion. 600 billion. So doon nagtanong na pwede bang magbigay ng 10,000 per family, pwede nga 20,000 sa poor families because at what point will we stop or will we temper ayuda and start giving money for small businesses? So the same thing, no? If I ask now, I'm sure he'll give me a brilliant answer. If I ask you, Chairman, how much dapat ang student loan? How much dapat how much dapat ang scholarships, etc. But with body that will tell us also the economic forces. Because I wonder, for example, if we compare how Ateneo, LaSalle, UST, di ba, priced their per unit compared to UP. I don't know. President Gigil might, but I'm sure LaSalle, Ateneo, UST, all those brothers, Saints Co sisters, Assumption sisters, hihimatayin if I compare them to PUP and ask them na mag 12 pesos lang kayo per student. Maybe there is something in PUP na ating gayahin. How are they able to do that and win awards at 12 pesos? And I hope if we give them 20, 30, better. The study is not really on whether we should spend more on education, but really what is the right mix of student trips and what is the role of the SUs private. I'll give you a last example. Many LGUs are suffering because during the pandemic, nag-close down yung private elementary high school. Taguig is privileged to have some money. So ang ginawa ng Taguig, inap nila yung 1,000 or 20,000, 15,000, 10,000 to the private school, 5,000 sa estudyante for uniform para hindi magsara yung private school. And people were thinking it's to private school. It actually helped the public school. Because kung nagsara lahat ng school na yon, wala silang tatakbuhan kung hindi sa and we're even assuming na halos yung quality ng private school at public school sa elementary school. Sa college, it's really different. It really depends on yung focus at specialty. I'd really like, I don't know kung may funds na, I want to propose a system of how a Filipino with nothing but wants to go to college can finish college. Of course, if they want to go to a polytechnic or they want to go to TESDA, that's just as good. But ang point ko is, if they want to go to college, system, health can do their no balance billing, then half of the problem. So ganun din. Paano tayo magkakaroon ng no balance billing sa college education pero hindi maapektuhan yung market forces or yung the economy of the economics of university. Thank you,
So,
Madam Chair.
last response. CHED has data that shows that the current financial support that we are giving to the students of the 60,000 and the 40,000 I mentioned, depending if they're going to private or public school, 9% are able to complete their university education. This representation's concern is that now that it's going to be lower for 2025, based on the UniFast board decision, that will surely go down. And that's why my challenge to them is they might want to reconsider that. this body to return to ensure that we can at least keep the same amounts, then that is what
I totally agree, and I think
reduce that price. And Senator Joel Villanueva is making a face.
no, I think we all agree with that. I think for 2025, kailangan talaga natin i-bridge at itaas. I'm saying beyond that, so let's say, if you're an engineering student, and wala ka talagang pera, so let's say PUP has one of the, but what if you wanted to go to Lasal or Mapua? Since we hardly have any student loans, and since the scholarships now are easily state you, ang pumipi na parents pipili na mag instead. So that's one aspect of it that gets distortion is the right word. Market distortion because nga libre dito, di ba? Oo.
in my immediate vicinity knows the tuition of Mapua. Maybe somebody can Google. Basically, the until 2024, the subsidy given is 60,000. So if you assume that other than the LaSalle's, maybe knows UST, but 60,000 maybe with a little bit more, makapasok pa sila sa sa private.
No, but Madam Chair, first of all, studies show that tuition is only 30%. 70% is yung dorm, etc. Okay. Secondly, isa state you, automatic lahat sila eh. Sa Mapua, hindi lahat ng mahirap, automatic yung market force. Again, I'm not saying it's the perfect system, but in a perfect world. First of all, studies show that tuition is only 30%. 70% is yung dorm, etc. Okay. Secondly, isa state you, automatic lahat sila eh. Sa Mapua, hindi lahat ng mahirap automatic makakakuha ng 60,000. So that's what I meant na nadi-distort yung market forces. No? In a perfect world, again, I'm not saying this is the perfect system, but in a perfect world, basta't mag-aaral ka at kaya and the government is willing to pay, di ba? Then the student will choose where you want to go. Eto grades mo, you get 200,000. Eto grades mo, you get 50,000. Eto grades mo, pero galing ka ganito probinsya na hindi mo kasalanan na less, eto yung ganon, then they can go where they want to go. But now, at least in my personal consultations with people, if you're from Palawan, your parents will say, go to the two state universities of Palawan. If you're from Taguig, about 1/3 pa rin of our parents, even if we will pay for their students to go out, they'll say, 3-4 naman university natin, dito ka na lang. Just because it's cheaper. No, so what I'm saying lang is I don't think that's the best. It's not even scholarship. Finish college, no one left behind program that we can have. No, but of course it's much better than 5 years ago and it's much better than 10 years ago. Walang duda doon. But sumasabog ang population So sustainability, which is your thing, Madam Chair, comes into play na talaga. No? So anyway, I'll stop there and thank you for your time and your answers and for the CHED's hard work on all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, the Minority Leader is seeking the floor. I move that he be recognized.
We recognize our Minority Floor Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I intended to really scrutinize the budget of the CHED and each of the 100 plus SUCs. But given the lengthy interpellations already plus the manifestations, siguro I'll just urge the CHED as well as each and every SUC to work closely with the EDCOM 2. Take advantage of the fact na may EDCOM 2 and tsaka not in a formal setting but in a workshop setting, baka mas marami pa tayong ma-achieve po doon. And even your budgeting process will, believe me, will improve. If you collaborate and work closely with EDCOM too.
Yeah.
So just an appeal na lang siguro because marami na rin naman tayong na-discuss na bagay.
For the information of the Minority Floor Leader, per CHED chairman, now is always part of their TWGs. So I just reminded the chairman that His Honor is also recommending that the SUCs themselves directly consult with the EDCOM and take advantage of
Take
all the
advantage of
reports and
EDCOM
the
too.
resources.
Take
Mga
advantage
SUC
po.
presidents, take note.
Kasi we need to rationalize this, yung tertiary education subsidy. Is it a subsidy or do you want it to be a scholarship? I mean, iba yun, in my opinion. Correct me if I am wrong. Iba si subsidy sa scholarship, siguro. Yeah.
It's a subsidy.
Correct, yes. But, doon na natin ayusin yan sa EDCOM 2 because we have to siguro fix the concepts and then decide what we want and then dapat may political will tayo to pattern everything to achieve what we really want to achieve. Kailangan may political will, hindi pwedeng if you accommodate everybody, lahat ng ideas, mangyari. So that's the purpose of EDCOM 2. So take advantage na lang po sa lahat. That's my appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The Executive Director of EDCOM 2, E.D. Carol Yee, is present here with us on the sidelines, and I'm sure he's taking notes, and he'll be liaising and collaborating with the SUCs and CHED regarding the work of EDCOM 2. Majority Leader, Senator Joel Villanueva.
Yes, Mr. President, I wasn't supposed to ask questions, Mr. President, but maybe just a quick few questions if my dear colleague, our sponsor, would yield to some questions, Mr. President.
Of course.
Joined the party when Senator Alan Cayetano made that statement of comparing UP's budget to PUP, and I'm not even going to ask further if the budget of UP Sports Development versus PUP Sports Development, and I will no longer ask that question because in the next few weeks, we will be facing each other in the UAAP Final Four. So,
But I need to answer that question because
But if
there's
you wanted
there
to
is a
answer-
UP varsity senator who funds the UP Sports Development Project.
Is that
Other
the-
than the nowhere to go but up na puro basketball. Yun lang naman ang reason doon. Simple
that's
lang.
your reason. My
Yes.
reason is I want if you answer that question, I might be tempted to scrutinize and ask every single cent, especially the funding for basketball, Mr. President.
Hindi ho ako nagbibigay sa basketball, all
Okay.
the others but basketball
Thank you.
because they have their own private donors.
Thank you, Mr. President, and may the
And alam kong hindi ka magpapatalo kasi
and
sa
may
basketball.
the best team win. And dito na si Sen Nancy, dumadami na ang mga Maroons. Mr. President, I'd like to ask just a few questions. In recent years, Mr. President, the seed fund for the development of medical schools in SUCs has received additional funding. This fund aims to assist our SUCs offering medical degree programs to develop po yung institutional material, pag-apply po ng mga facilities natin, laboratories, capacity building activities. May we know the rationale for the 45.45% decrease fund for medical schools in 2020, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman?
So, Mr. President, as His Honor will recall, the funding needed in many cases for this implementation of the Doktor para sa Bayan, which includes seed funds, additional capital outlay, MOE, is always a Senate initiative.
Yes.
So even though after how many years DBM already started funding since last year, DBM started funding both capital outlay and MOE for the initial batch of medical schools because and this is the little brag, we are so successful, His Honor, this representation, CHED, in really pushing for the implementation of Doktor para sa Bayan, hindi sumasabay. So, the next year, it's always us, the Senate, that is funding these unfunded needs for the completion of this medical school program. So this particular year, Mr. President, the need is now, for 2020, 2025 NEP, it was 150 million.
Okay.
But the need is actually 275. The additional...
Which was the 2024 budget, Mr. President, this year's budget.
Yes.
And that's why, Mr. President, that's another thing that I'd like to raise.
So, but wait, I'm not yet done,
Yeah,
Mr.
sorry.
President. So sadly, the committee under this representation recommended the funding, but we understand the limited fiscal space, so it was not included. So this representation absorbed it in my own individual amendments, which His Honor can very well share with me.
Mr. President, we laud the efforts of our distinguished colleague. I just wanted to put on record how appreciative we are in her, how do you describe it, the sponsors walking the extra mile to really achieve our goal and our dream of putting up, establishing schools of medicine, not just producing doctors, but schools of medicine. Mr. President, I just wanted to point out that I think we are in our last year by next year, which was part of the law, wherein we were supposed to put every single, school of medicine in every single region. So are we on time, Mr. President? Will we be able to achieve this part of the law that we passed here in the Senate, which the sponsor and I, together with our colleagues here, work very, very hard, Mr. President?
So, Mr. President, unfortunately, there are still 2 regions that do not have a med school. But the reason is because one of the prerequisites for putting up a medical school is a hospital where these future doctors can train. And there is no, anong level yung hospital?
It has to be level 3, if
We
I'm
need
not
a level
mistaken.
3 hospital, and there are no level 3 hospitals in the Cordilleras and Caraga, Mr. President. So we have to go back to DOH, who will be here, and perhaps His Honor would like to pose that question, or I will ask the question later on with DOH.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I wanted to raise this afternoon, this evening. I will no longer ask some of the questions that I have here. I wanted to inform the body that our region in Central Luzon, particularly our beloved province in Bulacan, received the help, the needed help from this institution. And I have been informed, Mr. President, that there are 48 students now in Bulacan who are eligible for the medical scholarship and the return service program. I hope, Mr. President, that CHED will expedite the approval of their scholarships as well, as these students have already paid their tuition this semester out of pocket, Mr. President. I think that's all I wanted to raise. Some of these questions I can just talk to our sponsor, Mr. President. And again, I thank the chairperson, the one in charge in defending the budget of CHED and SUCs. We thank our friends from CHED and SUCs. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo. Maraming salamat, dear colleague.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, there being no other reservation for interpellations, I move that the budgets of the state universities and colleges and the Commission on Higher Education be deemed submitted for the Senate's consideration and approval. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the budgets of the aforementioned departments and agencies are deemed submitted.
Sorry, and before we are suspended, I have complete transparency. this representation funds UP basketball women's. Women's. I think His Honor can take that.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Okay. May I request the members of the Cooperative Development Authority to already stand by, and they will be the next to be di pa bang session suspended. And may I request the members of the Cooperative Development Authority to please stand by. They will be the next to be on deck. Share lang ako. Share lang ako.